Hey, fifth grade, for today's writing workshop mini lesson, we're going to be talking about planning sheets. The last few days, you guys worked on creating a territory list for the unit or for the genre of memoirs. And so you've been working on creating a list of memoir-worthy experiences using question prompts to generate ideas for that. Before we get started, I wanted to teach this lesson on planning sheets, even though it may not come late until later in the writing process. I kind of wanted to put it in front of you and just remind you of this because memoirs are longer pieces than free verse poems. And so sometimes kids get intimidated by the length of the piece or just the fact that it's different and it needs more detail and you have to follow the same rules as everyday writing, like prose, whereas free verse poetry allowed you to have a little more freedom and get a little crazy as far as like creativity goes, playing around with different things. This one is a little bit more rigid, and so sometimes when we find ourselves in a spot where we can't really progress through the writing process, a planning sheet can help us. So this may not be something that you use right away when you start writing your memoirs, but it's something that I want to be kind of in the back of your mind as we begin this unit. So I'll go ahead and get started. Whenever I hear writers complain about writer's block, I want to take them aside and whisper, "Psst, listen, have you ever heard of a planning sheet? It gets me unstuck every time. There's nothing more effective when I don't know how or what to write than to doodle with words, to use writing as an aid to get myself writing again." And just in case you're unfamiliar with what writer's block is, it's what they call that state of kind of being stuck, the I don't know what to write and I don't know how to write feeling that you get sometimes, where you just feel like there's a block keeping a mental block in your mind, keeping those ideas and words from coming. I found this little cartoon of Calvin and Hobbes, and it just kind of plays around with the figurative versus the literal language here. It says, it's a writer's block. You put it on top of your desk and then you can't write there anymore. And even though that's not what a writer's block is, the result is still the same. Something is keeping you from being able to write. And so we know that good writers don't just sit and stare off into space. They use concrete strategies. And so that's what I'm about to show you. So we'll go ahead and keep going. Here's what I mean. Anne was trying to begin her first memoir. She decided to write about a family card game at her grandmother's house. This was a ritual she felt would show what her extended family is like when they're together. By the time her teacher had dropped by her desk for a conference, Anne had been staring into space over a blank piece of paper for a good 20 minutes. Mrs. Atwell asked, "What are you doing?" And she answered, "I'm trying to think of a way to begin this memoir." Mrs. Atwell replied, "Sitting here staring into space and thinking about the perfect lead isn't a productive strategy, but thinking on paper about the perfect lead will give you some concrete directions and even better, a chance to make choices from among those concrete options. Here's what I do when I'm stuck. I'd like you to try this strategy. Make a list of all the points in your experience when you could enter the action of the story. In other words, list all the possible leads. Brainstorm. Then comes the fun part. You get to choose from among the possibilities on your list the entry point that you like the best, the one that would be the most fun to pursue as a writer. Anne made a list of potential entry points and then decided to begin the memoir with her grandmother trying to lure reluctant grandchildren to the card table. This process took Anne 5 minutes as opposed to 25 minutes of staring into space and getting nowhere. If you find yourself in a similar situation, grab a fresh sheet or open a new Google Doc and think on paper. Generate concrete options that you can name, touch, and piggyback off in the form of new ideas. You can see that this is her list. So this is her blank paper. This is her list of possible leads. And this is what she brainstormed. Granny trying to get us to play cards. When we've started to deal. Grammy teaching us. in the middle of the game, and the beginning of the game that mom wins in one turn. So once she made that list and had, a good amount of options, then she chose the one that she liked best, and this is what she went with. And then you can see that she went ahead and wrote that lead down below before actually starting her doc. So like on draft 1. So she kind of played around with it to see if she liked it. So here's what she has. So who's going to learn to play? My grandmother asked as dark settled over the house. And I want to point out here, it starts out with dialogue. And if you think back to those lessons we did on the qualities of ineffective and effective memoirs, starting out with dialogue is a pretty good idea. So who's going to learn to play? My grandmother asked as dark settled over the house. She sat at the dining room table, shuffling a deck of cards. You guys can see that she started with this and then she decided she probably needed to go back and add this detail. That's why you see this caret here and you see her cramming her words into this small space. The adults looked encouragingly at the 3 children. Kate looked up from the newspaper which she had been willing her disappearance behind. Eric continued to read one of his vampire books, which I don't like to go near for fear of being taken in by the dark side. I, on the other hand, had no excuse. I'd been gazing intently at the antique ornaments on the tree, lit up by the warmth of the room and the post-Christmas joy that were the multicolored lights. Okay, so you can see that just in 5 minutes, she was able to jot down a list of possibilities. And then once she found one she was excited about, then the writing came very easily. And this is something that we've talked at great length about. It's very difficult to write about something that you don't care about or are not excited about or have no experience with. So when you select what you're going to write about, picking something that is truly important to you or truly meaningful to you is going to be a very, very big deal, and it's going to offer a very big advantage to you as a writer when you set out to start that first draft. Go ahead and read over these notes with me on a planning sheet. So these can be found on page 24 of your ELA reference folder. You guys know every time I teach a mini lesson, I have put a little snippet or a section of notes in that ELA reference folder for you to go back to, because sometimes once we start that writing process, we need to go back into those lessons because we can't remember everything that we've learned. And so this provides that opportunity for you. If for some reason we're in a distance learning model or you're home quarantined or for whatever reason you're not at school and you don't happen to have your folder with you, I have attached this notes page to this Google assignment so that you can still go back in and look for it. So it should be found either in your Drive or you can always go back to this lesson in your Google Classroom. So follow along with me as I read over the notes that I included about a planning sheet. A planning sheet. A planning sheet is a place apart from the draft where a writer doodles with language, gathers words, images, and ideas, captures and stores what might otherwise get lost, breaks through a block, and generally uses writing to generate writing. Use a planning sheet to help you get started, to brainstorm ideas, to play with leads, to collect details, to record strong words and phrases, to capture and store an idea that comes to you while you're drafting. Focus on a problem in the draft. Try out different ways of saying something, experiment with conclusions, figure out an order or organization, sketch a timeline of events for a narrative, explore the possibilities for what might happen next in a story, or brainstorm titles. Guys, these are just a few of the possibilities or the ways that you can use a planning sheet. And I want to let you know that when we start drafting your memoir, I will be sending documents in a package, like all in one assignment, like I did when we were writing free verse poems. So when you would go into your work, you would see the page that you would pre-write on. You would see the page that you would draft on and then revise. And then you would see draft 2 and editing, and then draft 3 and polishing. So you would have 5 documents attached to that assignment. When we start writing our memoirs, you're going to see those same 5 documents, but you're also going to see an extra document, one called a planning sheet. And this is just going to be a place for you to doodle with words or to jump to when you get stuck, so that you can kind of play around with it, because sometimes we just need to take a break from the text. I know when we draft on computers, it lets us go in and rearrange things and change things. So you may feel that a planning sheet isn't necessary, but sometimes our brain just needs that blank white space away from the words we've already written to kind of give us a clear view or give us a fresh start, or to be able to brainstorm effectively. So you'll see that. Now, it's not a requirement that you use it. It's just another tool for you to use to make your writing better. All right, guys. That's all I have for today. We're getting closer to being able to start our memoirs, so I can't wait to begin reading all of those fun and crazy memories that you guys have recorded and are going to bring to life in the form of your first memoir. I love and miss you guys. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything from me at all, or if I can help in any way. I can't wait to see you in person soon. Bye, guys.